Manchester United 2, Tottenham Hotspur 2. What a weird game of football. Ultimately, not a bad result with the 2-2 draw. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is that a good point? But certainly a very weird game of football today. Now, what I want to do today is bring you guys a bit of clarity on what actually happened in the game and why it happened. Particularly with the point of view of Manchester United. Because tactically, I think it was very, very odd. Some of Ten Hag's approach to the game was a little bit different to what we've seen in recent weeks. So today I want to bring you clarity on some of the key areas of what went wrong for Manchester United, but also a couple of the things which went well. So we'll start off with the play out from the back, something which I labelled before the game as one of the most important factors of this football match. And I think in terms of the control of the game, it turned out to be true. So how did Manchester United look to tackle this problem? How did they look to play out from the back? Well, they split their centre-backs either side of the goalkeeper, as you would expect. And Spurs, not always, but largely went for some sort of front two pressing structure. They would then often have one behind them like this, two wider players, a structure looking a little bit like this, although it did change depending on, that particular situation. But what was more interesting was the way that Manchester United approached these situations. First of all, we've got Wan-Bissaka on the left-hand side, pushing high. Now, I believe the reason that Wan-Bissaka played on the left was because that we practiced with Shaw left back, Dalot right back, and then Shaw pulled out last second, so it's just easy to put Wan-Bissaka in, rather than changing the whole structure of the back four. So Wan-Bissaka pushes fairly high. Eriksen does something a little bit similar. Kobbie Mainoo moves across, and Diogo Dalot moves into this area. Now, instantly, what United have got here is a problem with a lack of width in the first phase. There's no obvious pass to a fullback in these areas. It's a little bit difficult. I just realised I got Varane and Evans the wrong way around. Regardless, United then played a pass out from the back to someone like Johnny Evans, and because the United midfielders are fairly high, Dalot and Mainoo kind of isolated in midfield, Evans often didn't have a quick first pass that he could go for. So he would be forced down the line. And of course he doesn't have a right back to play to because Dalot is inside, so therefore Garnacho is now tasked with dropping all the way into these areas to receive the ball with his back to goal. So he's facing this way with his back to goal. And the problem with this is that this just isn't optimal for Garnacho. Garnacho is not a back-to-goal sort of player in these areas. He wants to be much higher up the pitch. When he was receiving these sort of passes in here, Udogie just ate him up, basically. He was constantly there, physically much stronger than what Garnacho is. And Garnacho really struggled to get into the game because of this. And it gave United quite a poor build-up structure. Some of the passes from Evans to Garnacho were, really ambitious, really audacious. And it was just a difficult thing to connect. And it just looks a little bit like a confused build-up structure, if you ask me. It doesn't look like the players were completely sure of what they were supposed to be doing, and it led to issues. And, of course, it also led to, at times, United going quite long because they're struggling to play out from the back. So instead, rather than turning the ball over constantly, let's go long and get on the second ball. So United tried that instead. Let's say going long towards Rasmus Højlund or even to Rashford on the left-hand side. But the problem was that when United went long, the ball would then come back into these areas, and the likes of Højbjerg, Bentancur, Oliver Skip, when he was a little bit deeper, were better at winning the duels than what Manchester United were. Eriksen, for example, won 1 out of 3 ground duels in 60 minutes. Not great. So United struggled with those two phases of the game. Initially not being able to play out from the back very well, and then therefore going long and losing possession. I do just quickly want to focus on that play out from the back though, because we've got examples of it here. So we can see on this occasion, the structure is even more confused. This is 4 minutes into the game. Because on this occasion, United have actually built possession down the left-hand side and then come backwards. So even Johnny Evans is out of position on this occasion. And we can see Dalot inverted all the way into midfield. And Onana doesn't really have an option on the ball. Now eventually what happens is the ball comes wide to Garnacho. And we can see exactly what I was talking about here. Receiving the ball with his back to play, with Udogie coming towards him, with no real obvious passing option apart from, Dalot here. He's isolated. It's difficult for him. He does keep the ball on this occasion. But in terms of trying to create an optimal system for Manchester United to play out from the back, I just don't think this is it. Not Garnacho as the primary receiver in the first phase. This is a slightly better example because it's more settled. So again, Johnny Evans and Rafael Varane, our two centre-backs, split very wide either side of the goalkeeper. And then Dalot inverting into midfield. Now, Onana's going to be forced to the right-hand side by Richarlison. That's a good press. Comes towards Johnny Evans. We can see the front two of Spurs. And again, because of the distances, because United don't have a natural wide player on the right-hand side anymore, we can see just how isolated Evans is. And it's so easy to force him down one side of the pitch. And in the end, his only option is to play a difficult pass in towards Garnacho. Garnacho doesn't quite get there. It goes out for a throw-in. So again, this is a sign of the poor build-up structure. And again, it just looks a little bit tactically confused to me. We've got another situation here, 2 centre-backs split either side, Dalot inverting, no options for Onana, so he goes long. And again, Garnacho against Udogie just isn't the ideal battle, although Garnacho does well to win the free kick here. I just don't think it's a great approach for Manchester United to try and use. It's a bit tactically confused. Now, as a result, United couldn't get a foot on the ball in this game. You know, we didn't really have any spells of United dominating and taking control. We're not going to see a sustained possession structure, for example, from United, because it didn't really happen in this game. It did, however, happen for Spurs because United were so poor on the ball. So what Spurs look to do, as they normally do, is use their fullbacks to torment the opposition, particularly Porro on the right-hand side, up against Marcus Rashford. And what United have is the problem that they've had all season, where initially United can't win the ball high up the pitch because the press is poor. We've spoken about that in the past. I don't want to go too in-depth on that here. What I want to cover more, though, is our defensive structure more in these areas, in this mid-block phase, where United are often set up initially in a 4-4-2. Let me just get rid of that. So we've got Rashford and Garnacho either side of Kobbie Mainoo and Christian Eriksen, and we've got a Bruno Fernandes and Rasmus Højlund front two. Now the problem initially is I don't think the front two are in harmony with the way that they press. Now, is that an issue between those two players, or is it a tactical issue? Probably tactical, because we've seen it a lot this season. But what we often see is it almost looks for a moment like we're trying to use a piston press, which is when you do this, like this, and then as the ball goes across to the other centre-back, you then shift like this. It looks at times like we're trying to do that, but then it just doesn't happen. So, for example, we'll see the ball's this side, Fernandes presses, Højlund is here, and then as the ball goes across, Højlund will then shift up, but then Bruno just doesn't drop back in. So it's quite easy for Spurs to then move the ball through that first line. In other situations, we'll see the two of them not pressing at all, which is fine. But again, they're not really affecting play enough. There's too many passes which are just going straight in between them into someone like Højbjerg, who can get on the turn. So that is problem one. The next problem is that United are often man-for-man in midfield. Now, Erik ten Hag denies that we are man-for-man in our own half, but simply, I disagree with him. I think he is wrong. Because we see it time and time again that United find themselves man-for-man in these areas. And the problem with that is in a man-to-man structure in your own half, you just get pulled out of position. So let's say Skip moves out here. Mainoo has to follow him because of the structure we're in, but that just leaves so much space in these areas. And that was a real problem for United. United, in their man-to-man structure, just got pulled all over the park, really. We got pulled into so many different positions, particularly Marcus Rashford. Porro would make a run into this sort of area here, and Rashford was ending up as left centre-back. We'll look at an example in a second. What United have to get better at doing in these phases is passing runners on to the next guy. So as Porro, let's say we've got Porro here, Rashford's on him, and Eriksen here on Bentancur. As Porro makes his run forward, does Rashford really have to track him all the way into left centre-back, where he's now going to stand for 20 seconds, marking Porro? Or is there not a situation where perhaps that runner can be passed on to someone else, and someone else covers in here? Surely that would be a better structure for United, because at the moment what happens is we're passive in the first phase, and it's quite easy to play through us in that first section. So Spurs have got time on the ball, and then we're kind of in a man-to-man system, which means our players can be pulled literally all over the pitch, opening up spaces for different players in random areas. It's really quite easy to manipulate this United team, and then therefore the opposition find it really easy to move the ball forward. Again, we've got a couple of examples of this.
So before we continue into the video, a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, JerseyFIFA.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that be the new latest releases or the old classic ones like this, Jersey FIFA has something for everyone, and now you can check it out yourself using the link in the description down below. And also make sure to use code JerseyFIFA for 10% off when you order.
So this first example here, about half an hour into the game, we can see Bruno and Rasmus Højlund in a front two. They're not particularly applying pressure to the ball on this occasion, but I haven't really got an issue with them. What we can see, Marcus Rashford, I'm just kind of circling with my mouse here, is going to follow Pedro Porro. He is man-marking him. And Eriksen is keeping tabs on Bentancur, and just out of shot, we've got Kobbie Mainoo up against Skip. And as the ball gets played, we can kind of see this develop. So Eriksen still here is trying to steal yards on Bentancur. We've got a front two who aren't really doing much. This is where communication could solve a lot of problems. Surely, if we just quickly mark this actually, surely Bruno Fernandes and Rasmus Højlund between them can cover Bentancur in the middle here. And therefore, someone like Christian Eriksen can drop more into this space. But that doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And instead what we see is a situation like this, where actually we've got Kobbie Mainoo being dragged out of position by Skip, Eriksen's being dragged out by Bentancur, and up here we've actually got Marcus Rashford left centre-back in a back five. Now, a goal doesn't come from this or anything like that, but it just doesn't look like an optimal situation. We can see the United players getting pulled about, and we can see just how many spaces that leaves in the United midfield. Again, Rashford left centre-back. Obviously, you want your winger to track back, but from a tactical point of view, Marcus Rashford should not be in left centre-back on more than one occasion in this game. But it did keep happening. It did keep happening, particularly throughout the first half. We got it again. So Bruno Fernandes and Rasmus Højlund are high as a front two, and Bruno is at least applying pressure this time. But what we can see is that Christian Eriksen is very close, or trying to get close to Bentancur. Now, I would argue, if Bentancur is to drop in and receive the ball, again, where I've got my mouse here, that's not too much of a problem. But because United's structure is man-to-man, we seem to want to follow those players into these areas, which just leaves massive gaps. We've also got Kobbie Mainoo near Skip on this side. But again, look at the space in this area, and look at the fact that Marcus Rashford is left centre-back on Pedro Porro. The gaps we leave just don't make sense. And again, as the ball gets played on a few seconds later, we can see once again, Eriksen is looking for Bentancur. He's looking to kind of jump out into this area. We've got Kobbie Mainoo on Skip over here. And once again, Marcus Rashford is left centre-back. It doesn't make sense. Now, of course, it wasn't that exact scenario every time. There were situations where Rashford was higher, Pedro Porro was deeper, perhaps Eriksen was a little bit deeper, more centralised. But you can see just in general that it was quite easy for Spurs to open up space in the Manchester United half by moving into different positions, by dragging our players out of position, creating a lot of spaces for other players. And this allowed Spurs to really move the ball forward very quickly and hurt the United team. Fortunately for United, Spurs were without some key players. They didn't have, realistically, their best midfield three, who are good at kind of playing the ball forward quite quickly. James Maddison has that eye for a pass. If you look at Bentancur and Skip, when they are receiving the ball in space, they're not players who want to play on the half turn. It doesn't really suit their game. If we also look at the front three, they're not the most clinical set of forwards and not really the most creative either, particularly with Timo Werner on the left-hand side. Also, at times, Spurs did just move the ball a little bit too slowly. So United were quite easy to play through, but got a little bit lucky because Spurs weren't at their best. They weren't moving the ball about as quickly as what they normally would. Although, tactically, they were still very good. They just didn't have the personnel, so United got away with one a little bit. And United were kept in the game, basically, by one particular pattern, which we all knew was going to happen. And that was, when Rashford isn't left centre-back, he's a threat on the counter-attack behind Pedro Porro. Porro wants to push forward. Rashford, at times, is willing to take that gamble of staying higher to get into this space here. And this goes back to, actually, the build-up phase, which we were talking about right at the start of the video, and why United persisted with trying to play down this side, even though it didn't work. The reason was because if they felt that if they could drag the Spurs players over, that ball to Rashford on the other side was always on. To be fair, we obviously saw that like 2 minutes into the game, United score with that exact ball from the right-hand side over to the left-hand side with Bruno Fernandes. And of course, that was the big threat for United in this game. We can quickly look at it here. Bruno Fernandes has received the ball from the right-hand side, and he's looking for that run of Marcus Rashford. I said it the other week, these two are on a different wavelength to everyone else when it comes to these situations. These two are so in tune with each other. It's so good. Bruno Fernandes barely even looks half the time when he plays these passes to Marcus Rashford. It's just what happens now. It's what they do. They've got the blueprint. They know how to do it every time. And it's really effective. Manchester United get into great positions because of it. If we kind of take this as a freeze frame, this is a really promising situation. Now, Rashford does well. He gets on the ball, cuts in onto his right foot. Højlund probably gets in his way a little bit and eventually nearly tackles him. It eventually falls for Rasmus Højlund with a really good finish. And of course, the other goal was very, very good as well. The finish from Marcus Rashford was top quality. So, in terms of from a tactical point of view, that's definitely what Ten Hag got right. In transition, Manchester United were a massive threat, looking to attack in behind Pedro Porro, using the pace, athleticism of Marcus Rashford, and of course that end product in the final third. And therefore, United did have a threat for most of the game. So, I don't think Erik Ten Hag deserves, a bombardment of criticism for this game. Because United did carry a threat. Without putting a great side on the pitch, we still had key players out injured. We did carry a threat. However, at the same time, tactically, Postecoglou did outdo him. And I wasn't pleased with what Ten Hag done in this game. Like I said, the play-out structure from the back for me was just confused. I'm not really sure what was going on there. I understand the idea behind it, but it just didn't work. And then also defensively, the man-to-man press in midfield, we just get pulled apart. Players get pulled into all sorts of different positions. Again, Rashford left centre-back. It just looks a little bit tactically confused. United come away with a point, and with all those things taken into consideration, that's why I think it was a decent point. Because performance-wise, United didn't deserve the point. But, you know, those are my thoughts on the game. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is it a good point? Is it 2 points dropped? Before the game, I would have said, yes, 2 points dropped. What was the problem? Was it Erik ten Hag? Were his tactics poor? Which, you know, is what I think was the case. I think tactically we were suboptimal. I think we left too many spaces in too many areas. Or was it perhaps, you know, the fault of the individuals? Bruno Fernandes, for example, despite that brilliant pass to Rashford, didn't really have a great game. Eriksen was pretty ineffective. I thought Scott McTominay done well when he came on, although missed a huge chance to win it right at the end. He does have to score. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is it a good point? Is it a bad point? Who's to blame for the result in general? Let me know what you think. Apart from that, we are finished for today's video though. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.